Well, welcome back to Conflict of Interest. We're talking tonight about the Labor Party, in particular recent disastrous results in state and territory elections and what it means for federal Labor. Our guest tonight is Nick Economou, who is probably well known to many of you. He's a well-known commentator on Australian politics, senior lecturer in politics at Monash University. Nick, welcome to Conflict of Interest.
Thank you very much, Greg. Yeah, well, pleasure to be here. Pleasure
Nick,
to be with you.
We were just talking before the break about Western Australia and the Western Australian result. Colin Barnett, now Premier, in a power-sharing arrangement. Do you see this as a stable alliance, or do you think there's going to be another election?
Look, theoretically, you would think that this is the basis for instability, because not only does he have to rely on the support of 4 Nationals, plus an ex-Labor MP, the member for Carl Gurley, who's now an independent. But apparently my understanding is, well, I don't know about that, but my understanding is that he has said that he will align himself with the Nationals. Yeah. So the Nationals are actually saying they've got 5. But my understanding is that Mr Barnett still needs a couple of the former Liberals who are now independents as well. So on the surface it looks like you could have a very unstable situation there. But we've had instances of state governments, minority state governments before. The coalition government, shall we call it, in Western Australia will also have the advantage of controlling the Legislative Council. That was actually a very interesting outcome as well.
I didn't realise that.
Okay. Yes, indeed.
So the Liberals or the Conservatives won that.
Yeah. Correct. Yes, and it was pointed out in the press, I think, recently, that there's a bit of an ironic twist there, because the Greens performed very well in this election in terms of vote. They actually, in the lower house contest, got nearly 11% of the primary vote, whereas the Nationals got 4%. No seats, of course, for that, whereas the Nationals got their 4. But in the upper house, the Greens have actually surrendered the balance of power to the Nationals. So the Nationals control both houses of Parliament. So that will help the new Premier.
That's extraordinary. The Nationals are controlling both houses.
Indeed.
And when everybody writes the National Party off at a federal level.
Well, people have been writing the National Party off since when it was formerly the Country Party, when it appeared, and they always seem to come back from the dead. I mean, the point I would make about the Nationals in state or federal politics is that their overall representational numbers may be incrementally falling, but they always win a strategically important number of seats. And in situations like this, it's not the total number of seats, it's whether or not you've got the balance there. And
it's also not the total number of votes.
Indeed.
Because, I mean, they don't even only stand in some electorates, unlike other parties which really stand in all of them.
And the Nationals have shown too that they're able to win seats back, especially off Labor. Their biggest threat tends to be the Liberal Party when they're involved in three-corner contests. If they lose a seat to the Liberals, they find that hard to get back.
Before we leave Western Australia, let me ask you this. Brian Burke, what role has he had in the bigger picture of losing government?
Yes, I think that's probably the crucial issue.
Yes.
What we know from the way voters behave in state elections as distinct from federal elections, one of the things that Australian voters voting in their state jurisdictions, one of the things they don't like is any sense of their governments being involved in something shady, corrupt, allegedly corrupt, or what have you. Now, although Western Australia is a long way away and keeping a watching brief on WA politics can be quite difficult, you get the very strong impression that one of the problems that Mr Carpenter and his predecessors had was trying to expunge the ghosts of Burke and Julian Grills.
But not just the ghosts. I mean, Burke
he was actually
real
quite active
presence today.
There were some independent commission against corruption. I think it was called
the Triple C. I think it's called
the Triple C and Crime.
Commission.
That's right. The thing that was the byproduct of the WA Inc. years.
Well, they've got a report coming out shortly.
Indeed, and they've been investigating a number of people. And in fact, Brian Burke's name came up. And of course, we know all this because this happened during the federal election campaign as well.
But isn't it interesting that they've managed to get the report after the election, but it didn't save them?
It didn't save them.
No, indeed.
What do you think of New South Wales? Nathan Rees has had a troubled start early on. Is it terminal in New South Wales for Labor?
I think so. I think they're in real trouble. The only saving grace for Labor in New South Wales is the state constitution, which holds the election off until 2011, I think it is. And interestingly, Mr Rudd will have to go to a federal election before then.
Before New South Wales.
Not that I think that what's happening in New South Wales will immediately or inevitably lead to a diminution in Labor's chances federally. Because remember, Mr Howard, when he was successful, would win states that were under the control of Labor in state politics. Queensland's a classic example.
I mean, I really think there's a threat it's going so badly in New South Wales, and as I said, another irony is that they can't. The best thing to do would be to hand over the government, clean the party out, and start again.
Yeah.
But they can't. They won't do that.
No, and they won't, and they
can't under the Constitution.
They can't under the Constitution. The only way in which there could be an early election is if the government was to lose control of the lower house. Most of the constitutional reforms
you could just
in
have a
states,
vote, but
well, you could, but I mean that's really
that's not
testing
my
the
point.
credulity
my point
of
is,
the voters.
isn't it going to? If they're on the nose for the next number of years, as they will be, with the voting public, well, aren't voters going to make the connection and say, well, we're not going to vote for Rudd because he's the same mob?
Look, I think, Peter, this is a difficult area. Most of the time, first thing to say is there are no iron laws in politics.
Yes.
So you can sort of say, look, this is what we think
This is why we're all experts.
trend. That's right. And this is why, even when we get it wrong, our expertise is never questioned. As long as we can make a reasonable fist of explaining why we got it so badly wrong. Now, my feeling is that Australians are actually capable of distinguishing between federal and state issues. However, you do get instances where things are so bad in a state that it will bleed over into federal voting.
Yeah.
Now, we had it in Victoria in 1990.
Yeah.
I think we've had it in Western Australia because Mr Rudd did quite poorly in WA in the last federal election. And my feeling now, with the benefit of hindsight, is that it wasn't a reaction to Rudd or what he was on about.
No, it was
but
a
the
reaction
voters
to
actually that's right. So in
the
fact,
back issue.
Mr Rudd's electoral interests in WA may well have been improved
Yes.
by the defeat of
But
Labor.
his
there.
electoral interests, it's the point I'm making, equally are going down in New South Wales, which is the centrepiece state for any federal government.
Right. The crucial thing there will be the question of the spillover, the knock-on effect.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know. 2 years is still a long time, and Nathan Rees may be able to pull something out of the fire. That doesn't look very promising at the moment, given what's happened there. But another thing I would throw into the mix is that we have to remember too that New South Wales Labor Party has always been the factional powerhouse of internal affairs, but it's not the factional base of Mr Rudd. In fact, the New South Wales branch of the Labor Party potentially represented something of a threat to Rudd. And Rudd's power base is more in Queensland. So I actually think his position within the Labor Party at the national level has been a little bit improved by the falling apart of
that may be
New South Wales
right
Labor.
about National Labor, but I'm more concerned about what the voter thinks. And at the moment, I just think New South Wales Labor is so bad that people are going to vote Liberal, whether it's state election or federal election.
The way things
I
have
think
been
that's
going
a risk
there,
for Rudd.
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely right. And ordinarily I would say, well, now the new man is in charge, perhaps they can get away from it. But they've had such an inauspicious start.
We've heard that before. We heard that with Emma.
That's right.
The new man was
Let's
going to
look at the scenario that Kevin Rudd might face when he goes to his next election in 2010, assuming he goes the full term. We're going to see Labor government elections. Well, we've got elections, coming up in Queensland, Nick?
Queensland, I think, is the next one off the rank, and I think that may be next year.
Yeah.
They don't have a fixed parliamentary term either, so Anna Blythe's got the option to go early if she wants to. But I was keeping a watching brief on this because you may recall, again, in the lead up to the federal election, there was a controversy over local government reform in Queensland. There was some feeling that there would be an adverse reaction there. So,
which didn't really play out,
no, it didn't play out. It didn't happen. And I think that of all the states, I think the Labor governments in South Australia, Victoria and Queensland are probably the most stable and most likely to be returned, albeit with slightly reduced majorities. I think, well, Western Australia clearly has gone. New South Wales is a basket case, and the Tasmanian Labor government's in trouble too, although Tasmanian Labor's problem will be from the Greens rather than...
That's right.
And the Northern Territories won.
Well, they've had their election. They've got their
one seat.
And of course, we've got the ACT election coming up as well. That's a Hare-Clark system, so who knows what will happen there.
Nick, is part of this just the natural cycle and a fluxion of the cycle? So we can expect to see, if we were having this discussion in 3 or 4 years' time, perhaps a lot more Liberal governments around Australia.
But I don't see... How long has Labor been in power in New South Wales?
Oh, 15 years.
Well, where's the cycle there? That's 2 or 3 cycles.
They really should have. They really should have. I mean, they shouldn't have been in office as long as they have. But the Liberal Party in New South Wales has been hopeless.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is I don't know that you can really do this by the numbers. I think a lot of it's got to do with how good the government is. So I think Bligh and Queensland's got problems. I think people are really pissed off about health, and I think all this freeway, highway stuff is not good. And you always have. Because Brisbane's so far away from the rest of it, there's always a bit of a risk.
It's a very decentralised state.
Yes.
And it's very hard to call what's going on because what's happening in regional Queensland can be important.
It can be
and
quite
we've got
different.
the added element of difficulty there by trying to nut out what's going to happen with the non-Labor side of politics now that they've merged.
Yeah.
Remember, that's now a merged Liberal national entity. So it'd be interesting to see how that.
It's ironic, isn't it? We've got a merged entity in Queensland on the other side, the National Party was resurrecting itself in Western Australia.
Well, look, we've got to wind up now. Time goes quickly, doesn't it?
It does.
But thank you very much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Nick Economou from Monash University.